Defendant Donald Trump gets to give part of the closing argument after all. Why? And is he getting special treatment? Yes. Let's discuss. I'm Dave Aronberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, aka the Florida Lawman, here on the MeidasTouch Network. So Judge Engoron first told Donald Trump that if he wanted to give a part of the closing argument, he would have to abide by certain rules. You couldn't talk about things that were not introduced as evidence. You couldn't go on political diatribes. And of course, you couldn't violate the gag order in place. So Donald Trump refused to agree to those rules. And so Judge Engoron said, that's it. You're not going to be able to give the closing argument. Well, guess what happened at the trial during the closing argument? Judge Engoron allowed Donald Trump to give part of the closing argument anyway. At the end of the case, Chris Kise, the attorney for Donald Trump, asked the court if Trump could give part of the closing argument, could speak to the court. Now, mind you, this is different than testifying. This is not on the stand where he has to take an oath and get cross-examined. This is giving part of the closing argument as his own lawyer, even though he has lawyers representing him. Now, as far as the law in New York, whether other defendants would be able to do the same thing, in the case of People versus Rodriguez, the High Court of New York, called the Court of Appeals, aka the Supreme Court in other states, ruled on this matter. They said that a criminal defendant has no federal or constitutional right to hybrid representation. That's what we're dealing with here. And the court said, while the Sixth Amendment and the state constitution afford a defendant the right to counsel or to self-representation, they do not guarantee a right to both. These are separate rights depicted on the opposite sides of the same constitutional coin. To choose one obviously means to forego the other. And so the court concludes that a defendant who elects to exercise the right to self-representation does not guarantee the assistance of standby counsel during trial. Similarly, a defendant like Trump who chooses to defend through counsel cannot, as of right, make motions or file a supplemental brief on appeal or sum up before a jury. Well, that's what Trump was allowed to do. The court said because the defendant has no constitutional right to hybrid representation, the decision to allow such representation lies within the sound discretion of the trial court. So there you have it. The decision is up to Judge Engoron, the same Judge Engoron who endured a bomb threat the night before. The same Judge Engoron who saw that he and his family and his law clerk had been repeatedly threatened. We've seen this over and over again, to the point where Judge Aronberg issued a gag order, but he only issued a gag order to protect his staff, meaning his clerk. So when the MAGA folks say that Trump is subject to a two-tiered justice system, maybe they're right, but not for the reasons that they say. Donald Trump has been treated better than other defendants. Do you think that other defendants who badmouth the judge, who threaten witnesses in some cases, you think that he would still be able to continue doing that without a gag order in place? No. Do you think he would have been sanctioned from the court to perhaps incarceration? Possibly. But in the case of Donald Trump, he's only subject to 2 gag orders total. One in New York for this case, a civil fraud case. And that gag order only applies to the judge's staff. He can continue bashing Letitia James, the attorney general, continue bashing the judge and his family. And then there's the one in Washington, D.C., the D.C. election interference trial where Judge Chutkan, who is not messing around, but when it came to the gag order, she put it on hold while Trump was able to appeal it to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. And while he was appealing, while that gag order was stayed or paused, Trump then went after Mark Meadows. This is what happens when you keep appeasing the MAGA world. Look, the alligator is always hungry, and appeasement doesn't work. And so when Judge Engoron was asked at Trump's trial by his lawyer to allow Trump to give part of the closing argument, Judge Engoron allowed him to do so. Now, before he did, he said to Trump, well, you're going to have to comply with the rules, essentially the same rules that Engoron told Trump to comply with earlier, where Trump refused. So he reiterated it. He said, you're going to have to comply with the rules, only speaking to the evidence in front of you, no political diatribes, and so forth. And Trump refused to accept that. Instead, he got up and he laid into the judge for 5 minutes. And he did everything he wasn't supposed to do. And the judge sat there, glared at him, but took it. And people are wondering why. Some people say, well, Judge Engoron wanted him to speak so that he could reveal more damaging evidence against him that could be used in future cases. I don't think that's it. I think that Judge Engoron wanted to give every benefit of the doubt to Donald Trump, wanted to bend over backwards to treat him better than any defendant, because he knows that the MAGA base of Donald Trump is not going to accept this ruling, and he wants the public to at least buy into it. But you can't persuade the unpersuadable. And bending over backwards to appease people who will never buy into a system as long as their guy is a defendant is just counterproductive. It undermines criminal justice system and undermines our democracy when you give certain people special treatment. Because at the same time this was going on, Hunter Biden was over in California pleading not guilty in his case. And did his judge get a bomb threat the night before? Was his judge subject to threats, criticism by the defendant, swatting? No. We've come to accept this two-tiered system where we appease the ones who are the loudest voices. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And it's not working. We're not bringing people together. It's just driving us apart. No person is above the law. That means, at the same time, that no one gets treated any better or any worse under the law. And it does seem that judges who I respect, like Judge Engoron, has given Trump a better treatment than other defendants who bash a judge. I mean, look, I'm a prosecutor. If a defendant in my cases started bashing the judge and prosecutors, and we've seen it before, that defendant wouldn't be allowed to do that much longer. They'd be sanctioned. They could even be sent to jail. Certainly, they wouldn't be able to launch into a diatribe against the judge for 5 minutes, bringing up extraneous things, false information, and doing it for his supporters' benefit. But this is what continues to happen. And this is why I say, no matter what happens in this case, because I do think Trump is going to lose badly in this case. I mean, he could lose up to $370 million in control of his companies. And I think the judge will probably get him for at least $250 million. And I know the judge wants to ensure that his verdict is appeal-proof, but there's been so much evidence that giving Trump the ability to lash into the judge for 5 minutes doesn't make his ruling that much stronger for appellate processes. It just makes the system look bad. So while we will see Donald Trump be given a very tough sentence and verdict here, in the end, he's been treated better than others. And he will continue to lash out until a judge or someone else is able to stand up to him. Maybe it's Jack Smith, but in the meantime, we cannot depend on judges. We cannot depend on prosecutors. We cannot depend on members of Congress, certainly, to save our democracy. We have to do it ourselves. The people on this network have to do it by speaking up, speaking out, and voting. So that's the latest. I'm Dave Aronberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County, a.k.a. the Florida Lawman. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for watching. We're only a few subscribers short of 2 million subs. Please subscribe right now to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel for free and help us grow this unapologetically pro-democracy network.